You're muted right now, Rebecca.
Aha, okay, there we go. Sorry, I'm talking to myself over here. All right, so welcome. Please let us know if you can't get to the links at the bottom, if that doesn't work. And as we're going, if we have any questions, just pop it into the Google, the chat window. As I mentioned, we are recording this. We heard kind of last minute from some folks they wouldn't be able to make it. So we'll be posting that and emailing out to anybody, so you won't be missing anything. So today we're going over our elementary coaches program and talking about kind of what the goals are and how it's run this last year, all of those things. So just a little bit of background information. CodeVA, we are a statewide nonprofit here in Virginia. You may have seen our Digital Dominion map. We have those in a lot of classrooms across the state right now. And our mission is to bring computer science education to all Virginia students. And so we do this through a combination of direct teacher training. We do programs with students like summer camps and after school programs, and then also advocacy. So working with governmental agencies and the Department of Education to really be the voice of the teachers that we've had go through our programs in terms of what their needs are in bringing computer science education to everybody. Just some fun facts. We started training teachers in 2014. This is a little bit out of date. This graphic was done back in November of 2017, and we've had a lot of teachers go through programs since then. But back in 2017, 59% of Virginia districts had at least one teacher trained by CodeVA. That's gone up quite a bit since then. 2017 by itself, we trained 568 teachers, and you can see the percents there by grade level. We are a code.org affiliate, so we do a lot of those programs. So you can see the vast majority of those teachers we've trained are at the elementary level. So overall, since 2014, and this is actually a little bit above 1,700 now, but we've trained, at that point, it was 1,614 teachers. So we've been incredibly fortunate to work with some absolutely amazing educators across the state. And one of the things I really appreciate about the folks that we've worked with is it lets us really learn so much from their classroom experience. And I think one of the things that's most important to me as we develop programs out of these programs is we have teachers from every possible situation across the state. We have teachers in cities, in the suburbs, in rural areas, north, west, east, south, all over the state. So we really work hard to make sure that we're listening to all of those different voices as we design programs. And I hope you'll see that reflected when we go over the Coaches Academy. So just a little bit of background. The Standards of Learning, the law was passed back in 2016. The group of teachers worked very, very hard. I think that's one of the amazing things in Virginia is, unlike a lot of other states, our standards are written by groups of teachers. They have advice and input from outside groups, but it really is classroom teachers that are the main focus in terms of creating what determines what students are learning. So those folks had a very short window in the spring of 2017 to write the draft of the standards. November of 2017, the school board, the State Board of Education, passed those standards. And we just got word recently from Virginia's Department of Education that the mandate officially starts in 2019, 2020. So the next year and a half is a really good time frame for teachers, schools, and divisions to start really planning and putting pieces in place to make sure that they're ready for those standards. There's a link to those standards there if you haven't had a chance to look at them. One of the things I think you'll notice is that the teachers that worked on them put a lot of effort into making sure that wherever they could, they related those standards to things students are already doing. We have a very strong set of standards in state, and so those computer science standards really had a lot of foundation to work on as those teachers designed them. So when we look at computer science, and this relates to the content of the Coaches Academy. So the computer science is divided into 6 strands. We have computing systems, which is just hardware, networks and the internet, which is how we communicate information back and forth, data analysis, which of course is transforming a lot of areas of study, science, medicine, all of these areas. Big data is a really big trend right now. Algorithms and programming, impacts of computing. That's really thinking about the impacts, your privacy online. How does technology change how you interact with people? There are all kinds of ways that computer science has really changed how we live our lives. And students do need to be aware of those things for safety purposes and just being an informed voter. And then the last strand there that I have highlighted is cybersecurity. This is a little bit different. A lot of the national standards and other states, they roll cybersecurity under networks and the internet. But because of Virginia's strong place in the country in terms of all of the areas in terms of national cybersecurity that we house, the decision was made to make cybersecurity its own area of focus. One of the things I find really interesting is a lot of those for early elementary, they overlap with family life. So for little kids, we're really talking about their own safety online. And then as they move forward, really thinking about that security mindset of how do they think about safety in terms of computing devices. So when we talk about our standards for kindergarten through 5th grade, these are not pull-out standards. They're not something that is expected where schools are going to add a whole different block in students' time. They really are meant to be integrated in with what students are doing. And so when we started thinking about this problem of, okay, how are we going to get teachers the information they need to integrate this, that's really the kernel of where the K-5 Coaches Academy came from. So the goal of the program is every school across the state that wants to can have up to 2, possibly more depending on your number of students, coaches trained. So they're a division level employee. They work for the local school division. They work in that school, and they will be trained to be able to do professional development and on-the-spot training because it's a pretty big lift. Most K-5 teachers don't come in with a degree in computer science. That's not their background. So one of the things I wanted to spotlight is when we look at the standards, thinking a little bit about what integrated means. So here, as an example, we have a standard for 1st grade computer science. It says the students will identify and explain responsible behaviors associated with using information and technology. That's one of our cybersecurity standards for the early elementary grades. If we think about it, this relates to civics. 1.10, same grade level. The student will apply the traits of a good citizen by focusing on fair play, being responsible, all of those things. So again, it's not a huge lift to think about this particular computer science standard combined with that social studies standard students are already engaging in. And with all of the computer science trainings that we've done at elementary, I don't think I've ever met an elementary teacher that is not in some way talking about responsible behavior with computers and being safe online. Those are things we're already doing. And so that was some of why that was put in there. It's like, well, if schools are already doing this, it should be reflected in our standards that we cover that. So that's what we mean by integrated. For most of the standards, they're meant to be really co-taught at the same time. And it's maybe a little tiny tweak with existing lessons and curricula to get the computer science injected in. So we have this issue of coding versus non-coding. So most of the strands you notice were non-coding. So here's an example of a non-coding standard in 4th grade. The students will model how a computing system works, including input, output, processors, and sensors, right? But when we think about science at the same level, students will investigate and understand characteristics of electricity. That's actually why that computer science standards was put there. Because when we think about input, output, processors, we think about, 4.3V basic circuits. Well, that's what a circuit is. That's what's processing things inside the computer. So it's a very natural fit that you would be able to just enhance that science lesson by including that little extra information about computing systems. The one area that is not really integrated the same way is the coding piece. And so coding is something that, there are a lot of schools doing great things around this, but it's a bit of a hit or miss. It's not something that's been very systemic. So while we know there are teachers across the state doing fantastic things, it's not universal. So this is the one area that really is going to need a heavy lift. And that's actually one of the core elements of the Coaches Academy is getting those coaches ready to support teachers for this coding piece, because we know this is a really big new thing for a lot of elementary schools. So one thing to point out is, if you read the standards and you're not thinking ands and ors, sometimes you can kind of miss this. So at kindergarten, it says basically the coding in kindergarten and 1st grade, that coding piece can either be a group or a whole class activity. So if you look at the language in the standard, it says either independently or collaboratively. By the time we hit to 2nd grade, students do need to be coding specifically on their own. That language shift has happened. So it says both independently and collaboratively. But again, they're not working by themselves. They're still working together, but they do need some time where they're coding independently. So you can start to think about, as we need to train our teachers to be ready for this, that's a pretty heavy lift. And then when you get up, if you take a glance at those SOLs, if we think about a 4th grade or a 5th grade teacher, they have several years where that's a moving target, right? If they started this year and most of the students in their building have never done computer science or coding before, they're sort of starting at a basic level. But as the school is building their capacity and more teachers are incorporating this at the 4th and 5th grade level, you've got several years where your student skill level is going to be shifting. And that's another key element of why the Coaches Academy really was designed to have somebody in the building that has that expert, deep knowledge of computer science. Because for a lot of teachers, it's not like they're going to get trained and what they do right now is going to stay the same. There's a lot of revision that's going to need to happen over years as teaching capacity builds and students' understanding of this builds. So if you do need more information on the SOLs, we did a deep dive on decoding the SOLs a couple months back. The recording's there. You can get to that link. I think it's about an hour. We had a lot of great questions, really good conversation around those. If you need help on those, that's there. But I'd like to transition now into talking more about what the Coaches Academy is built around. So our Elementary Computer Science Coaches Academy prepares district employees to support their staff in implementing the new computer science SOLs. It's a blended, meaning online and in-person, year-long program. Now, the first question I always get is, which district employee do you mean? This is an issue for the local district to decide. Some districts are using their ITRT positions. Some districts, their media specialists are the position. Some districts, they have a 4th grade teacher who's really excited about technology and has been doing some great things. That's the person who's getting chosen. Some districts, it's a combination. So it really is up to you. If you're in a position where you're struggling to kind of figure that out, our staff is available to talk to you and kind of walk through and do some troubleshooting. We also have a separate project called the Computer Science Roadmap. And that process also can help identify who would make a good coach. The main thing we focus on here is you don't have to have a huge amount of computer science knowledge to be a coach. You really have to have a willingness to learn new things and enthusiasm for bringing really good instructional materials to your teachers and students in your building. The Coaches Academy assumes that everybody is starting off at the same level of just very basic introduction level. And then certainly, advances from there. So we're not making any assumptions about where people are coming in. So in the first year, we actually piloted last summer. We started with a fantastic group of 18 teachers. They were from all over Virginia. We had groups from Norfolk and Henry County and all kinds of great places. And then throughout the year, we have a grant working with the Tobacco Commission in state. And so we were able to have and invite teachers in from Southwest Virginia. So it was actually a little bit over 40 teachers that came in throughout the year. And it was a fantastic experience this last year. We were, last summer it was very drafty. At that point, the SOLs had not been voted on. They weren't finalized. We were, we're having to sort of like huge draft stamp on everything that we did. Excuse me. But we really learned a lot. And I really think that this is the spirit of all of the programs that we do. We really consider our programs collaborations with the teachers that are going through. We know that we can make a best effort to try to prepare people, but we're really open to listening to sort of their experiences. And so our last session just happened back in March. And one of the things that the veteran, that's kind of how we refer to those first 18 teachers, they came together and did this beautiful debrief document for us. It really captured their experience throughout the year. And we're able to share like, hey, this has been great, and then here are additional things that we need going forward. And we knew that would happen. We knew that, since the SOLs weren't finalized, we're to a degree guessing a little bit. But it was very affirming to hear that they found the process useful. A lot of what we designed was very, very helpful, and then there were areas they wanted more. So one of the things we learned is they wanted professional development resources. And so when we talk about the materials that are included as a part of the Coaches Academy, we'll talk about what that's turned into. They also really felt like there needed to be more coding experience. So we're building that in this summer, more hands-on coding experience. And when we talk about coding, we really center it on the tools of programming. So we're very focused on what are transferable skills. It doesn't matter if you're doing the code.org platform or the Scratch platform, or you might be doing Python, and then in later grades, other languages. What are the core pieces that are universal no matter what language or platform you're working in? So we're really working to revise that piece so that it's very solidly grounded in those coding resources. And then I think one of the biggest just things that was incredibly great to see as they went throughout this last year is they were really, really positive about being part of a team and how much that helped them and how much farther ahead their schools were. I think that's one of the biggest pieces about joining the Coaches Academy is it's not just us delivering information to you, you're joining a team. So if you're working in your school building and you all just get stuck, or you're trying to decide, hey, I've got a little pot of money, I need to buy XYZ, I want to do something with robotics, you've got a squad of people that somebody on that team already knows the answer or can hop on the phone with you and really help you troubleshoot. And we've seen that over and over again with this group of teachers, that they have been incredibly generous with their time and sharing and resources. So the state is farther ahead for the work that those original coaches put in. So I think that's one of the most important things about the Academy is, we hope that everything we deliver is high quality, but more important, being in a room with other people who are working through this and having that backup of it's just an email away to get some help is probably, and this is true in everything, but it's just the most help is to have other people working on it with you. So the program overview, we start off with online modules. And so it's a stack of modules. There are some modules that focus on coding and really grounding you in the coding. We're looking now, based on last year's feedback, to expand that a little bit. There are modules that focus on the non-coding computer science standards. So what does cybersecurity look like in kindergarten, right? That's kind of a wacky question to ask. So what does that actually mean? Why do we care so much about binary? What do students need to know? Those types of things. So they're very centered on going through the SOLs and making sure you know the content. There are a series of modules also on just different teaching strategies, because I think that's something we've heard overwhelmingly from districts is it's a whack-a-mole. Different districts and even different schools within the same division have different access and levels of technology available. So if all you have are 5 tablets that you check out from your media center, what's the best way to integrate that in and make sure kids are getting equal access? So there's a series of modules focused on teaching strategies, and then also a deep dive on the SOLs themselves to really ground, because we want our coaches, that coach may be a 4th grade teacher, but if they're working with the kindergarten team, they need to have a deep knowledge of what those kindergarten teachers are really expected to do and what they're not expected to do, so they can really help steer those curriculum decisions. We then do in-person sessions. So it's a 5-day in-person summer training. We work on a lot of different things there. We talk about peer coaching. We talk about how do you do professional development, do's and don'ts. We give some extra time in person to do the coding piece. And again, we're going to be expanding that this next year, because we know that's one of the biggest, strongest pieces of feedback is they wanted a little more support with that. There are times too, we're actually in the process of doing curricular resources at the elementary lessons. So this next summer, they'll be learning around those curricular resources, doing sort of the traditional teacher, learner, observer model where they present lessons and get feedback and talk about, what are some of the struggles they're seeing. And then throughout the year, we have 4 Saturday sessions that are follow-up sessions. And so those have really been incredibly valuable this year. So for a teacher that, maybe they're working with a school that's really struggling and really trying to figure out, their first steps, to be able to come back in and work with that team again and say, okay, guys, this is what's really happening. How do I work on this? Instantly, somebody in the room is at a similar situation and they can talk it out and troubleshoot. And then we also continue to work on the computer science content knowledge during those sessions. So again, just deepening that computer science knowledge. One of the other things that's built in with this program is we recognize that this is not necessarily static, and 1 year may not be enough. So anybody who's been to the Coaches Academy at any point in future years is welcome to come back, either to the 5-day session, the 4-day sessions, or any combination that they need. So the idea is that group, that team, that those materials are always available for you once you've participated. One other thing that we've done this year is, in the past, we've always done our sessions here in Richmond, and through the project with state funding, we'll actually be offering this in multiple sections around the state. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. And that's one of the big questions around the Saturday sessions is, I can come in for a 5-day, but, driving 2 or 3 hours is really hard for a Saturday. So that was one of the big things, is we knew as we scaled, we needed to make it available regionally. So we worked very hard to find locations around the state to host those sessions. The training is completely free. It is funded along with our standards of learning. The legislature added a little tiny plop of money in the budget. And my I taught for 20 years, so the idea of calling $550,000 a tiny plop kind of, I was used to putting my entire classroom kit together for less than $100 every year, so it's a little scary to me. But it's not a huge amount of money, so we're trying to use it very effectively and make sure that every teacher that needs this gets access to what they need. And that 550,000 covers all training from kindergarten through high school. So there's a lot to it, and is covering the curricular resources. But we're able to include with that all books and printed materials. So the third bullet here, you'll see the elementary coaches manual. That comes out of the piece that we really learned with our coaches this last year, that they need resources. One of our coaches last year, she was like, I have 4 schools that I'm working with right now. 3 of them, they're really soaring, but one of them is kind of on the bubble in terms of accreditation. So they have a lot of internal work that they're already doing around that. The only thing I have time for is to go into faculty meetings. That may change, but right now that's all I have. I need a series of 10 to 15 minute activities that I can do at every faculty meeting throughout the year to make sure they're getting something that is cohesive and meaningful and moving them forward in some way. And so that idea is what's now being developed, and that's our elementary coaches manual. And so that is basically, it's sort of a living document. Coaches this summer will get a printed copy of this, but also we know that throughout the year, teachers and the coaches will come in with great ideas. And so we'll be adding to that and then sort of redoing it for the 2019 cohort. But basically it's professional learning activities. I think that's one of the hardest things. You already have a job, you're very busy, you're asked, hey, we're doing a professional development day. Can you do a 2-hour session in the morning? This means that you've got a kit of resources of small 10 to 15 minute like faculty meeting or warm-up activities, 30 to 45 minute like planning period length activities, and 1 to 2 hour activities you can do. And then you can combine those to create longer sessions. So again, that was a really strong piece of feedback that the coaches felt like they were overwhelmed with trying to come up with things. So they've actually been collaborating. So the first things that you'll see in this coaches manual this summer are all coming out of experiences from the coaches last year. They've been incredibly generous. So printed materials, there are also just several books that cover, just elementary computer science. So you've got some resources there. Obviously access to the online platform and all those learning modules. And then one of the things, we partner with Richard Bland Junior College. I'm on the board there. I should know better. Slap my hand. So Richard Bland Junior College, it's affiliated with William & Mary. And so as a part of participating, you can get 3 college credits. It's a 1-course credit for completing the program. And that's in computer science. So that can help you with recertification and all of those things. So for no money down, it's a really robust program. There are a lot of things you're walking away with. We also have some other materials. So you'll see some of the graphics that I'm using throughout. At the very beginning, you saw the digital Dominion map. Those are available for free for teachers across the state. That's hooked in with a tourism project that the governor's office, Dr. Terry McAuliffe's office, worked on about a year ago. And then also you'll see these badges. And so one of the things, this again was an idea that one of our coaches had last year. She wanted a way to visually recognize in the building which teachers were trying computer science. So we now have a series of badges. They've all got this little cute robotic cardinal. So this is the badge for the coach. So our coaches can hang this on their room and, decorate, that kind of thing. They're also a way, like if a principal wants to recognize people who are doing computer science things in their classroom. So we have computer science pioneer, means you've tried your first computer science lesson. Computer science partner, maybe you worked with the ITRT or a parent or a media specialist or another teacher. Computer science classroom means your classroom is regularly doing computer science. My favorite one, and we're almost about to launch this one, is this last session, the coaches wanted an epic fail badge, just to recognize, like, sometimes things don't go perfectly, but that's okay. And so they wanted one to kind of celebrate when a teacher's experienced an epic fail but got up and tried again. So it's just sort of a soft way to recognize teachers in the building and share successes. And so just, those kinds of resources are also available. And again, one of our main goals is to really listen to what we're learning from the coaches and to say, oh, okay, you need this. Yes, we can put our teamwork together on this and create it. So, this is what we know right now, but I know by the time we're talking in November next year, there will be other things that people will have come up with. The other piece is this idea of ongoing support. Again, we talked about that with the teamwork aspect. it's been phenomenal watching everybody dig in together. I think one of the things is too, just thinking about how we do curriculum in Virginia. Once these coaches are in place, it also means that schools and divisions have people in their division that have that deep level knowledge. And so as you have to change your pacing guides and plan out your PD model for the next couple of years, and when the science standards are updated and you have to update all your elementary resources, you've got some people that can come and sit at the table with you who know the computer science aspect and can really help you with those integration pieces. So that's another piece. Our trainers are really amazing. They're all classroom teachers. And so you're not just by yourself coming to a session and going back to your building and having to figure this out. You've got all of the coaches, you've got our facilitators, you've got our CodeVA staff, all of those people there to really help you as you're working with your district to bring this to your teachers and students. So a couple frequently asked questions that we get about all of our training programs. How much does it cost? That's always one of our first ones. This training is free to all Virginia public school teachers. If you represent a private school, we do allow private school teachers to attend. We have to, because it's state funded, we have to prioritize public school teachers, and there is a small fee. It covers the printing and the materials and those types of things. But again, that fee, there is no fee. It includes all curriculum, materials, online access, everything. You walk away with a pretty good kit of stuff to get you started. Does CodeVA cover travel cost? Unfortunately, the funding, we talk about, it feels weird to say 550,000 is a small amount, but unfortunately it cannot stretch to cover travel cost. But we have been able to expand the program. We're actively working on expanding our facilitation team so that we can have training happening across Virginia. So we're offering this at sites around the state. So you can get to this online. The link to our training site has that also. Here are all of the sessions we're offering. So again, last year it was just Richmond. We are offering the Southwest session is in Abington. Northern Virginia, we have one K-5 Coaches Academy happening in Staunton. So that's that Augusta, Shenandoah area. That's the same week as the Northern Virginia session. We have a session happening in Danville, of course, Richmond, and then we've just been able to add the Tidewater session, which I'm very excited about. So we figured that for almost every teacher in state, it should be a fairly short drive to be able to get to one of these sessions. So, hopefully, I wish we could bring everybody together at the same time, but this, I think, means it's accessible to a lot more schools across the state. Another question I get all the time is, do I need to know how to code? And the answer absolutely is no. We have a fair number of people who come in who have never coded before, or they might have tried like hour of code activities, but our expectation is most people coming in are at that novice level. But that said, if you already know how to code, that's fine. You can zip through the online modules. If you already know all of that, that's very quick. You can finish it very, very quickly. And then one of the things we do in our in-person sessions when we do our practice coding, we always have kind of a mild, a medium, and a spicy. So someone is a complete beginner. They're focused at that mild level. They're just learning the sort of beginning steps. But then we always try to have a couple challenge problems. So for people who've done this a lot, there are opportunities to do a deeper dive and start to think about, once you've moved past that novice level, how do I actually design student-facing resources using coding? And one of the pieces we also focus on is how do you integrate coding in with those core courses? So we've got some activities that we'll do throughout the training to focus on that too. So there's online support for coding, there's in-person support for coding. And again, this is something that really came out of the coaches from last summer, and we'll be measuring it throughout this next year to kind of see where everybody is and see how we need to adapt and expand if needed. Another question we get are, who are our trainers? So they are classroom teachers first and foremost. I always, whenever I'm helping with a session, I'm always very clear. I taught high school for 20 years. So I will not ever run a K-5 session without a K-5 person in the room with me. So I bring the computer science knowledge. I have no idea about how to do elementary ed, and I'm just very open and honest about that. And so because of that, we have been working on building a phenomenal team of elementary teachers to actually be our trainers. They are phenomenal. So they're experts in implementing computer science in public school classrooms. So if you go in and you're that school where it's like, okay, we have computers, but they're shut down for the next 6 weeks because of SOL testing. How do I make this work? your facilitators are going to be experienced with those kinds of questions. They understand just the reality of public schools in state, and so they're very, very skilled in helping you in any way that you need. And again, they're experienced in using computer science as a part of their daily instruction. So I think one of the things that's most inspirational about our team is they can really talk very, very, boots on ground about, this is what this looks like. When I work with a kindergarten teacher, this is what we're expecting. By fourth grade, this is what we're expecting. So they're very, very expert in that level. They also represent urban, rural, and suburban districts across the state. Like I said, one of the things I think that is our biggest strength is we have worked with teachers from all over Virginia, and our facilitation team reflects that. So again, if you're struggling with something and you are a large urban district, we have a facilitator who's in a similar district who can help you navigate that. If you're a teeny tiny little district, or like I was when I was in high school, we did not have a huge amount of money for technology in my school. Most of the schools in our division, the PTSAs bought our technology, and we were the school where our PTA was raising money to buy Thanksgiving dinners for families in need, right? We were that school in the district. So we have facilitators who've been in similar circumstances. So they're incredibly creative in helping you troubleshoot. And like I said, if you feel like, okay, I've got this weirdo situation because this is how my district runs, I guarantee we have at least one facilitator who's been in a similar situation who can help you troubleshoot and just brainstorm around it. And then the last piece is they just have a wealth of knowledge about computer science and pedagogical strategies. So they're incredibly tight. They work really, really well together. I'm so excited to see that team really come together to be able to serve all of you. So that's who we're putting together to put in the classroom with you all as you learn this. I think that's one of the most important pieces when we're looking at professional development, is that there's a real understanding of how public schools work, and especially at each different grade band. Now, if you're sitting here listening to this and says, that's all great, but I'm not really likely to do PD, we do have another elementary program. It's Launching Computer Science. This is a one-day session that really goes into just, the focus is less on professional development and pedagogical strategies and all of that stuff. The focus is solely on the computer science standards. So we will be running one of those in almost every location this summer. We're very excited to be able to bring that to you. And it's something also, if it's something you need locally, we have the ability, especially with our facilitation team, we can do those sessions around the state. So they can do after school sessions if you want to do a Saturday session in your area. And we can also focus on different things. So if you feel like you're in a situation where it would be helpful to have a one-day data and analysis session, we can design that. So that's actually one of the benefits of having the AHA last year, that we needed the coach's manual. It means that we have PD pieces that we can do. So, that is a program that's available. I don't want anybody feeling like all we're doing is training people to train. We also have teacher-facing programs. And so there are a lot of different ways that we can do that. So if you have any questions, just reach out. We can help support you with that. We do a lot of things. Again, we are the Code.org affiliate in state, so we use their resources. We do a lot of things with Scratch. And then again, there is a set of curricular resources currently being developed that are very focused on integrating computer science into daily instruction. So there are a lot of different ways that you can, as a classroom teacher, kind of expand your knowledge base there. So that is kind of the end. I'm checking the chat room. We don't have any questions at this point, but if you do have questions, or you feel like you just need a little bit more support, especially for school administrators who might not be sure about who the best choice is on faculty, or if you're a classroom teacher and just need some questions answered, you can always email training@codevirginia.org. And then there's a link there that will take you to our summer schedule and information on how to register. Registration's hopping along. We're getting between 10 and 15 registrations a day right now. So we do encourage you to register as early as you can, just so you don't lose a spot. Oh, and we do have a question. So Bert, do you want to unmute, or do you want to just type into the chat room window? It is up to you how you ask your question. Registration right now is first come, first serve. Now that said, we recently surveyed all of the principals in the state, trying to get a sense of which schools wanted that. Within 3 days, we had over 200 requests for the K-5 Coaches Academy, so we know there's a lot of interest. Some schools are requesting 5 spots, and that's going to be regionally just depending on availability. So if we're getting close to where, okay, we're running out of spots, if a school is requesting more than 2, we may have to go back to a school and say, hey, could we do 2 this year and 2 next year, that kind of thing. We understand that some divisions have large enough schools where it might make sense to get multiple coaches trained. And our goal isn't to cap things, but to make sure there's equitable access in that way. All right, the second question is, what type of interest are you getting for the teacher course? A lot, actually. Right now, that's our highest registration. And so, that also will be first come, first serve. But again, if you can't make it to one of those this summer, we have the ability to run those throughout the year. And with our facilitators being across the state now, we have the ability to be flexible with that. Will the Coaches Academy include the content provided in the teacher's course? Yes. Actually, the teacher course, those professional development activities, that's what's in the coach's manual. That's the core of that aha this year, that we needed to create some modules for that. The Coaches Academy does a deeper dive on what's covered in the teacher's course, because we want that coach, like if you're your school's one coach, you need to be able to work from kindergarten through 5th grade. A lot of times in our one-day sessions, we actually group people by grade levels. So we might have kindergarten and 1st grade teachers working together and 4th and 5th grade teachers working together, because the content is different at those grade levels. Yes, you absolutely. So the question just popped up, would we learn what the teachers learn too? And the answer is yes. So there's no secret sauce that the teachers are getting that the coaches would not have access to. So the question is 2 coach spots per school or per district? It's per school. Now, realistically, we have over 1,150 elementary schools in the state. We won't be able to get to every school this year, but yes, the goal is at a minimum over the next 3 to 5 years for every school in state to be able to get 2 coaches trained if they would like, with the understanding that for schools that have larger student populations, they may need more than 2 coaches. So, all right. Do you know where the NOVA course? I have learned, this is the question about where the course is going to be. I have learned, I've been doing PD for a long time, I have just learned we are getting very close to a location, but I've learned not to put the location out, because instantly, all of a sudden, if something changes last minute, all of a sudden everybody, they go to the old email, not the new email. So we're working with a couple school divisions to find the best location. As soon as that is there, we will be putting it on the website and also emailing everybody from that portion of the state once that's firmed up. The modules are available mid-May. We're making some adjustments right now based on feedback this last year. And Saturday sessions, no. Right now we're focusing on getting all of our summer locations set. Once that's done, then we start scheduling the Saturday sessions. So we'll get that out as soon as possible. In general, though, there's one in October, November, February, and March. We may shift February, March to March and April just because of the reality around snow. Those are face-to-face as well. But we are thinking a little bit about how we can mix that up. So again, a lot of our high school sessions, just because of the sheer amount of content they have to cover, they do need those Saturday sessions. So we're running them anyway, but we may be open to making some adjustments there. We've even talked about, especially in extreme Southwest Virginia and some of the Appalachia parts of the state, about having option of 3 to 4 people getting together in one building and Zooming in, those kinds of things. So we're open to doing some different ways of that. And if you have some thoughts about that as we go, we can experiment. Yes, and the face-to-face sessions for Saturday will be offered regionally also. We don't expect, if you've been in Abington for that session, we don't expect you to then drive into Central Virginia for just a Saturday. That's a long trek for folks. And the other thing too is, one of the things we've learned is there are regional differences, and I know you all know this from going to conferences and sitting down and chatting with your peers around the state. If you're teaching in a school that has a heavy military population in Tidewater, you have different needs than if you're teaching in a school that's primarily farm kids, right? They're just different. And so having those regional sessions also let the coaches, I think, troubleshoot together some of those things that are more unique to each of the zones across the state. Yes, you could absolutely go to a different location if necessary. And I think as you kind of look at the map, we're now at a point where, if you have, if your kid has a soccer game that Saturday and you can't make it, that's what it is. You can always go to a different session. And we're working right now on getting our system built up so you can just notify us. We have the attendance. And yes, actually, that is how we pick our facilitators. Those are folks that have to have gone through training. So the question, I should have read the question. I apologize. The question is, do the coaches get the opportunity to be the facilitators at future sessions? And yes, that's why I say all of our trainers are classroom teachers, and they have to have gone through the program that they will be doing training for. So that's very important to us to maintain that just core culture piece. It's the same for when we do curriculum and development. There will also be opportunities for that over the next couple of years. We know that right now we're just trying to get something out for the summer, but we know it's not going to be enough. It'll need revision and to be expanded over the next few years. So participating in programs also gives you some opportunities in terms of possibly being a facilitator, helping with curriculum, those types of things. And again, one of our core philosophies, and this just comes from my time in the classroom and having done PD for a long time, classroom teachers need to learn from classroom teachers. Curriculum needs to be written by classroom teachers. We certainly have experts that are in volunteer capacity helping us inform that. We have external review committees that help us look at curriculum, and they might come in as a guest speaker to a training session. But again, if you've never had to sit through a parent conference and you don't really fully understand school culture, sometimes I'm sure everybody has sat through that training where you're like, this person just doesn't get my day. And so that we've really learned that at the core of what we do is classroom teachers are the most important element of what we do. And again, if you have any other questions, you can always email us at the training email, and one of our staff can answer if we have time to get on a phone call. And the last question we had is, have the numbers been high enough that you're sure we'll have training at each location thus far? As of this morning, it's looking pretty strong. And to be honest, even if numbers are a little bit low, like our preference is to have 18 to 20 minimum, and then our cap is kind of around 40 to 50, just depending on which session it is. But we understand that especially in more rural parts of the state, if we have to run a session in the first year with 10 people, it's more important to us to plant that seed and to find people in that area that can, again, be trained to be a facilitator as it grows. And then in other parts of the state, especially when you talk about like Virginia Beach and Fairfax, they have so many elementary schools. Over the next few years, we're going to need to be running multiple cohorts. Fairfax has over 120 elementary schools. That right there is half the teachers, or almost over half the teachers we expect to train this summer. So. In terms of being in, the registration system should be pretty set. We are not yet at the point of needing to do a wait list. So, again, if you register in the next week or so, I don't anticipate there being a problem. If we do have to go to a wait list, we'll put some messaging in the registration process so that's clear. And, and then, like I said, if it's a wait list, we'll just start going first come to first serve. And teachers are usually pretty good. Like, there's always, you register and then something comes up, all of a sudden your vacation gets moved, or, that kind of thing. So there are always a couple drops. So we're just hoping to serve as many folks as possible. And like I said, we're not near that capacity yet anywhere. Central Virginia and Northern Virginia and Tidewater are kind of the hottest areas in terms of registration right now. And that makes sense. It's just the densest population. So, all righty. All right, well, we managed to get it in under 45 minutes, which I'm pretty impressed with. If there's anything that you need, if you're watching this as a recording, you're like, but wait, I wanted to know this, please don't hesitate to reach out. We know that this is brand new. We are the first state in the country. I should have said that at the beginning and I forgot. We're the very first state in the country to have a mandate from kindergarten through 8th grade in terms of these standards. And we know it's a heavy lift, but that is why we're here, to try to make that lift as light as possible. And so you're not doing it alone. Again, if you're at the division level, one of the things we will start working on next fall is a middle school coaches academy. We know that there's a need there too. Just let us know what you need as we're going. And, we're trying to be as responsive as possible to folks and really build and grow together with you. So, yeah. So somebody was joking that we had, I think this is the first like warm sunny day we've had in forever. So attendance was a little lower than we normally have for these. So it made it easy to get through all the questions today. But we appreciate everybody participating, and thank you very much. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. That's what we're here for. So happy coding, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.